And speaking of continuing the fight, we've got Dr. Lori Feynman watching. She's competing with you to be to be the host.
Well, by the way, based on looks, she wins this hands down over the bald guy with the goatee. So
yeah, we're gonna take over. We're gonna take over of the people and be like cussing people out and stuff.
Well, that's because we're all faux men here, and the women are the only ones because and what was it? Because if you're not voting if you're not voting for Biden, Harris, you ain't black or whatever they said back in 2020.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I want to jump to the governor's race.
Ooh.
So we have the former mayor of Manchester, now deposed thanks to you, Joyce Craig. You have former Senator Kelly Ayotte running for governor. I want to focus a little bit on Joyce Craig because here's what I don't understand, right? She has a record to run on. Right. She was ostensibly, when she was elected, what was it, 3 terms, I think, as mayor of Manchester, chose not to run for a 4th term. And she was running to solve the opioid crisis, to bring high-tech industry to Manchester, or Manchganistan, as you and I like to call it. And then she was going to, she's going to reform the schools and make the education great. Tell me about how that record is in Manchester, because I know what I know, but for our listeners,
okay,
how'd she do? I'm asking the chairman, how'd she do?
Yeah, I know. Well, you got to tell me. Okay, hold up, just really quick for people who don't know about Manchester, New Hampshire. It is a city in a small state that has big city problems. Okay, they have like wicked, mega big city problems across the border from a drug town and like all kinds of crazy stuff. Manchester has it bad, so I just had to give that preface so that everybody understands why we call it Manchganistan.
Manchganistan, right?
Well,
okay, now go.
We're retiring Manchganistan now with Jay in charge.
Yes.
And some of the things that, on Joyce's record for education, we have the standardized testing and we score all of the towns, all the school districts. We have 184 school districts. Manchester rated 180 out of 184 for their performance. So, Joyce would say, wow, I beat 3 other municipalities. Not good. Absolutely abysmal in education. As far as crime and opioids deaths, the opioid deaths crept up, across the country, but in Manchester, people were complaining that they couldn't walk down Elm Street without tiptoeing around needles because there were so many drug addicts camping out on the streets. So the death rate had gone up several years in a row under Craig. Wow. This year, they're projected to go from, they were 79 and 58 the last 2 years under Craig. And this year, it looks like the total number is projected by December 31st to be 44. Still 44 too many, sure. But it's trending correctly. The streets are much cleaner now under Jay, and they're cleaner because in July the Supreme Court said you can make ordinances to prevent camping in city parks and city property. The day after that Supreme Court ruling, 24 hours later, the Board of Aldermen, which is also Republican controlled for the first time in like 34 years, also to have an ordinance prohibiting camping in public places. So the tent cities, they started to remove them, but they were compassionate with the people. They say, hey, we have shelters that you could go to. We have other ways that we can help, but it's not acceptable for you to camp out in our city parks, use your drugs, leave your needles on the floor, defecate out in the city. So Jay put a stop to that, and you can tell the difference. We're still cleaning up some areas, but you can see it. And so opioid doses are going down, opioid deaths are going down. But he's done it in a compassionate way, not just, bulldoze over the place. But
Nice.
they're trying to take care of these people who have, addiction problems, mental health problems, and they need to be addressed. And Jay is really good at that. He's working with the services that provide that. Education, they're cracking down hard. Nobody wants to be 180 out of 184. So Jay's cracking down there hard. The mayor's on the school board. So they're working. That's going to be a longer term problem to deal with.
And that's there's a lot to unwind there, I imagine. Oh, sorry, Chairman Ager. There's a lot to unwind because if you figure people have just been left out in the streets for years to get worse and worse and worse. Like, think about how much more effort it will be to help those people recover. And so I think just focusing on what actually matters is going to make a difference. Like, you don't have this idea that Republicans, because we don't want people to live on the street, are uncompassionate or like mean. That's not compassion.
No, it's neglect and abuse, frankly.
They're dying. They're worse.
Right. Well, we had a lot of the people who are homeless on the streets of Manchester were not from Manchester.
What?
So is that Kelly? Is that
a lot
part
of the people
Kelly
that were homeless
slogan, which is "Don't mess up New Hampshire"?
People were coming from out of state and from other parts of New Hampshire, where it's better, in our view, if locally you take care of your problems in your family, in your local community. But if one city says, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of free stuff, you can camp out, I'll bring you free needles, I'll bring you whatever you need, they're going to attract them and they're going to create critical mass for a huge problem.
Right.
So it's better if you take care of it locally. We have a homeless person in Amherst. We had one homeless person. Everybody took care of that. Yeah. And it was manageable. But if every town sends all their homeless people, everybody with problems, to one place, it becomes a disaster. So Jay's working that, but he also has history and has worked with Catholic Charities and how to deal with these kind of problems. So you're not just pushing it somewhere else. You're actually dealing with the problem. Joyce Craig had no concept of how to deal with the problem other than to put her hand out for more money, to buy more tents, to give them more free stuff and free needles and everything else. And so it didn't fix the problem. It got worse. Jay, we're starting to turn it around.
That's fantastic.
So going back to the governor, so how does someone like Joyce Craig beat Colin Van Ostern, who was on the executive council, right? I thought he would have been the nominee, and I don't expect you to get inside a Democrat's head, but how does she win? I mean, because her record is abysmal as far as I can tell, and yet, look at what I did to Manchester, and I'm going to do that for New Hampshire is hardly a slogan.
Well, so Joyce Craig beat Cindy Warmington, the executive counselor, for governor. And we had both of our ads ready to go. It didn't matter who won, Kelly was going to win, or whoever the Republican was going to win. You either had the failed Manchester mayor or the big pharma lobbyist who thought OxyContin wasn't addictive. Those were the choices for the Democrats. And so we got the failed mayor. Okay. We would have been just as happy with either. Kelly or Chuck Morris, who Kelly beat convincingly, she won very handily. Whereas the Democrats, it was a very close race. So it's harder for them to heal, where we healed much, much more quickly. And Chuck gave a great concession speech, came to our breakfast a couple days later, the Unity breakfast, really, really first-class operation. So Kelly's likable. She's got experience. She was a prosecutor. She was the attorney general, senator. She's just a good New Hampshire, pragmatic, non-ideologue Republican, just like, regular old-fashioned Republican from New Hampshire. That's what Kelly's like, and that's what resonates with average people.
Yeah.
So I think she's going to do extremely well.
But here's I love the slogan when I drive around and I see the AOT plaques up or the signs up that say "Don't mass up New Hampshire," which sums up. I think that taps into something very core in most New Hampshire voters who do not want to become Massachusetts. And it's like, you guys can come visit, but go home. Leave. You want tax-free stuff? Come here, buy the liquor, no problem. Go home, and don't mass up New Hampshire. I think it's a brilliant slogan.
No, it works. Some people didn't like it at first. They're like, why are you picking on Mass? And it's like, well, because we're New Hampshire. I mean, they make jokes about us, but they don't stick. They do. They deserve it. And it's kind of nice to have some pride in your state and highlight the things that you're really great at. And it's easy compared to Massachusetts to do that because we have so many advantages. You don't see a lot of people moving from New Hampshire to Mass, but a lot of people from Mass move to New Hampshire. And contrary to popular belief, more people from Mass who moved up in 2022, which is the last year I have data for, more of the people who moved up were registered Republicans than Democrats, which is shocking because there's so few in Mass to start with. So the exodus was for Republicans to come to New Hampshire from Mass. So they're actually welcome. The Mass folks moving here are welcome because they're moving here because they want New Hampshire to be like New Hampshire, not Vermont, not Vermont, but certainly not Massachusetts. And they're moving into the southern communities so they can be near their family, their churches, their grocery stores, their friends and family. So they're moving here, and so they can commute and visit their family and friends with a better lifestyle, better taxes, more freedom, everything. So it's the best of both worlds for a lot of those people. And a lot of them are older, either at retirement or near retirement, which is a great place for them to live. And we've got a few millionaires moving up too because of the Massachusetts millionaire tax. It's like, we don't want you. It's like, that's nuts. We'll take them. And so we have quite a few advantages, just the quality of life across the board. And I just couldn't imagine living in Mass. You drive around down there and you have a shell casing from, dropped in your car. They pull you over. It's a year in prison. This is nuts. It's here. You can have a machine gun almost if you wanted to.
Live free or die.
Amen. Amen to that. And amen. If you have gotten something out of this episode so far, we ask that you like this video, share it with your friends, especially if you live in your New Hampshire. If you are one of our radio listeners, make sure to share this episode to hear about what is going on there. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel that you're watching on and support our sponsors. Thank you so much, Chairman Ager, for visiting with us today. Good luck up there in New Hampshire.
All right. Thank you. We got this.
And counting.